That's what I charge. You say the machine will be translating for me then, but I will be revising the content, and I will be taking my time to do so. But the guy did not understand that added value that I will be providing for his work. For him, most of the job will be done by the machine. So I'm a kind of useless person.
Okay, so first of all, let's be honest about the fact that translation is expensive, right? So it's not for everyone. Some people want translation, they think it's cheap, and so some of them will have this reaction. It's expensive. If you want, you can use machine and then give it to me, and I'll give you a rate at which I'll charge you. And of course, sometimes depending on the content, when you use machine translation, it doesn't make sense. It's like you have to start all over again. So
So it
sometimes
becomes
you just have
double
to,
work.
exactly. So you just have to charge your same rate.
Hello, Ady. Welcome once again to the CEAV English Talk. As you know, this is the creative, educational, altruistic, and vital talk, okay, here in the CEAV Services platform. Ady Namaran Coulibaly is a language professional, okay, a language passionate, and operations manager of Bolingo, okay, a language servicing company. And you do interpretation, translation, and localization. And yes, did I omit something, or do you want to add some more on your introduction?
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. What I can add is that I also host a podcast called Africa's LSP Podcast, where I have conversations with language professionals, especially about African languages. I can also add that I have been featured by multilingual media as one of the 52 women driving the language industry, and also listed as a localization influencer for 2021. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. And congratulations for
Thank
all
you.
these good prizes and awards.
Yeah.
So let's talk about today's topic. But just a quick reminder, last time, okay, in the previous CEAV English Talk with you, we talked about promoting African indigenous languages, okay, and Bolingo has released a brand new website. And what's the name of this website again?
It was the name is Akan News. Yes, so it's a website where we have information in Akan, in Asante Tree, and Fanti.
Okay, good. So how's it been going on ever since?
Ever since I think it's been good. People are still visiting the website. We're still sharing the content. We're still really excited about this initiative, and I think it's something that we'll just keep doing. And gradually, we'll add other low resource languages. By low resource, I mean languages, African languages that are not like too much on the internet, that are not too much digitalized. So what we want to do is to bring them online. And so maybe next time we'll try some other languages, perhaps even languages in Cote d'Ivoire, to see how it works out. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I see. So, well, good luck for the future. And how are people reacting about Akan News?
I think the reaction that we get is really congratulatory, because people are saying congratulations for doing this, and I've been waiting for this website for a long time. I was waiting for a platform where I can read, content in my own language, because the language is so much spoken. It's all over the radio, broadcast media, but we don't see much content, written content about it. So it was really new for many people, and I think that they really appreciate what we are doing.
Yes, I guess. So, good then, as we're talking about languages, local languages, but today we're going to be talking about language in general, talking about interpretation and translation. And today's topic is translation, interpretation, AI, and the future of jobs in the profession. Okay, so this is, let's say, a burning question. These days, people are talking about AI. Is AI going to kind of threaten our jobs as interpreters or translators and stuff like that? But we will go deep and discuss about that matter. So this is going to be in 3 parts. So part number 1 will be about understanding the value of interpreters and translators, okay? And part 2 will be assessing the evolution of the profession. Okay, what have been the major changes, ever since? Okay, and the last part would be analyzing the changes interpreters and translators have been going through. And one of the challenges may be led to the arrival of AI. Maybe AI has been around to solve those challenges, or maybe AI is one of the challenges. We'll talk about it. So, first thing first, how important are translators and interpreters? You being a professional interpreter and translator, how important is your profession?
Yes, thank you so much. I want to start with something that someone mentioned recently. The person said that translation is just like toilet roll. You don't think you need it until you need it, right? Until it's not there, then you're like, oh, I need this. Yeah. So it's quite interesting. I think that language professionals, as I would call them, are very important. First of all, because of communication. And we know about the Tower bubble and how, languages were changed and all that. So you see that because we say we're in a global village, we need to communicate. And so it's really essential to have interpreters and translators facilitate that communication. That is one. Number two, there is also the aspect of businesses. For a business to thrive, for a business that, of course, wants to expand to other countries, you would have to use the services of language services providers. You have to translate your content. You would have to have interpretation. So, for instance, if you are in a French speaking country, maybe you are operating in Cote d'Ivoire and you want to now move to Ghana, for instance. You can imagine all the linguistic and linguistic aspect that will have to be taken into account in terms of your brand, thinking about whether you should translate the name of your company or leave it as such, thinking of how to even interact, how the staff from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire will interact. So we play a very key role in all that. And then there's also a third point, which I think is very important, which is gradually also being spoken about, which is linguistic justice. So linguistic justice is ensuring that people can consume information in their own native language, right? And by native language, we are also including African indigenous languages. So not just assuming that people understand the colonial languages, but also making sure that they are able to have content in their own languages. And so I think we need to think about it in that way and ensuring that even in our own communication, for instance, if you are in a space, maybe you're in a company where there are other people who are from other countries and who speak different languages, like for instance, sending your emails in those languages, 2 languages or something. Even if you're going to use a machine translation for a start, it's good because people would at least have a basic understanding of what you're saying with internal communication, right? So linguistic justice is really, really important, and that's why our work as language professionals is also important. Let me also add the part about services. You would see that in developed countries, they have medical interpreters, right? They have court interpreters. And so these are public services where we have to ensure that people have access to information in their own language. But I think that that aspect is not really developed in Africa. So you wouldn't see or hear much about medical interpretation. But in other places, you will see that even within the immigration service, they always make sure that they interpret and translate things for people to understand. So there are so many levels at which we are important. But the interesting thing is that many people don't even know that we exist. Sometimes when you say you are an interpreter and translator, they get surprised, and the first thing they'll throw at you is there's machine translation. So, like, how relevant are you? But I think we'll get to that. But I just wanted to highlight some of the
Yeah,
importance of.
Yeah, that
Not good
machine
questions.
stuff always, pop up like it's the new
Yeah.
trend. Yes, we talk about that. So, as we know, because I'm also doing interpretation and translation, so I really feel what you are talking about. So, but let's go deeper in how important and valuable are translators and interpreters. How do you feel during an interpretation performance, knowing that without your precious help, people couldn't understand each other, communicate with each other? How do you feel?
I think first of all, I would say that it's a huge responsibility because you are that person that has to facilitate communication, and the communication really has to be clear. It has to be unambiguous. It really has to help the person understand what is being said. So it's a responsibility. That's how I see it, first of all. And that's why, as interpreters, we are always encouraged to practice, because without daily practice, you're not able to keep and update your skills. Just a few days ago, I was providing interpretation, and it's interesting how in the first 3 days it was simultaneous interpretation in the booth, and then the other days it was chuchotage or whispering. And so with that, you would sit near the person and be whispering in their ear, whispering the interpretation in their ear. So I think that our role is really important. And for me, I always feel like it's a huge responsibility, and I always feel like I have to give my best, yeah, when I'm interpreting. And it also makes me proud, to be that person, to be the link, among people, to help people understand, to help facilitate communication. And we also have to acknowledge that as interpreters, we really are a repository of knowledge, in the sense that we can navigate many spaces, right? So today you are doing, if for instance you provide services for many clients, you could be doing different topics. Today you're doing agriculture, tomorrow you're doing science, and next time you're doing, let's say, climate change or world peace, right? So it's really a lot. And I would say it's a daunting challenge or daunting task to be an interpreter, but it's also exciting because of the people that you meet, what you learn, and just the whole understanding of what it means to be an interpreter. It's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, really, really. You are like a kind of link, you are a bridge, you help people and you feel proud. You like, wow, thanks to me, they can understand each other. And as you say, there is a huge responsibility. You have to make sure that they really understand each other. There won't be a kind of misinterpretation, mistranslation. So you make sure that you update your skill, you upgrade, and and you perform very well. And I'm sure you are performing very well. You are doing your best,
I'm doing
because
the best, yes.
because you are one of the best. I'm sure. So no
Yeah,
worries.
I receive
Yeah.
it.
No worries. If you need, okay, an interpreter, a translator, no worries. Go to Bolingo. Hire, Bolingo stuff. Hire Ady. You won't be disappointed. For sure.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So interpretation, interpreters, translators. Did you notice I always point out interpreters, translation, for those who are listening or for those who want to become one of those people? Can you tell us the difference between interpreters and translators? And how do we call both in the profession? How do we name all those people in one term?
Okay, so basically, interpreters are the ones that provide oral support for languages. So let's say there's a meeting and people are speaking, and so the interpreter will be the one to, um, you know, let me say, we usually say render a message in a spoken form. And translators do that with text. So they have a document that has to be translated maybe from French into English, and then they will translate it, they'll translate the text. So that is the difference. Now, with regards to how we call both, for me, I would say language professionals. So we are all language professionals, whether we are doing interpretation, translation, subtitling, and all other services in the language industry, we call ourselves language professionals. Yeah.
Okay, language professionals. So not just translators, interpreters. It includes other
Exactly.
profession. Like, can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yes. Yes. So it includes other things like voiceover, there's voiceover, there's subtitling, transcription, transcreation, localization. And so all those things, yes, are part of the language services industry as a whole, and we call ourselves language professionals for those of us doing the language part of it. Yeah. But of course, there are other roles in the language industry. For instance, we have salespersons and project managers and all that.
Mm, I see. I see. Okay, good. So let's move on. So now that it's clear, interpreters are for the spoken language, and translators are for the written language. They deal with text, And however, there is a trend. I mean, something that I've noticed, that some people can be good translators but not good interpreters. Can people be both? Like, I know you are doing both. I am doing both. But for some people, it's not easy to do both. They can be good translators, translate very well, very accurate translation work, written form. However, when it comes to the spoken language, they struggle a lot. Why is it difficult to be both? What
Yeah,
can
so it's
we?
it's not, I wouldn't say it's difficult. For some, it's a matter of preference. Some people feel more comfortable, behind the laptop because nobody is seeing you. You're a translator, right? No one is seeing you. You're just typing, like you're just working the whole day. And some people enjoy that, like being in their own space. With interpretation, you'll have to have some other aptitudes, right? You have to be able to, especially because we're doing simultaneous interpretation, you have to be able to listen and speak at the same time. And so for most people, that is difficult. You also need to have a pleasant voice. You need to be confident. You need to be able to learn, like really how to speak well, to how to sound well, how to make meaning. And because everything is spontaneous, like you really, really, really have to be like so fast and so smart to think at the same time. And so, and of course, the difference between the both translation interpretation is the fact that for translation, for instance, you have time to review your document, you have time to go over. But with interpretation, once you've said a wrong word, it's gone, right? So maybe you've misinterpreted something and it's gone. I mean, the audience has heard it. You can't go back and have the words back. And so there's all that that you have to think about if you want to be an interpreter. And that's why for most interpreters, it's easy for them to translate also. But I also know some interpreters who don't like translation. I know one interpreter, when she has translation job, she always call me and say, "Oh, this translation stuff, I'm not interested." Just like she'll just give it to me. So as a matter of preference and also aptitudes, like really, really um, being, if you want to be an interpreter, being spontaneous, being a fast thinker, being able to anticipate what a speaker will say, and just always be on the alert, and in that environment, it's quite interesting. Of course, with remote simultaneous interpretation, we can also now hide ourselves like behind the screen and interpret, but it's still interesting how you really, really have to be spontaneous. You have to be able to deal with various accents. For instance, you have a Japanese speaking English, and these kinds of examples with some very thick accents that are even difficult to hear. So with interpretation, there are so many challenges to navigate in real time, and that's why it's a bit more challenging, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, you really nailed it. So many challenges to deal with in real time. You don't have time to double think, double
Yeah.
check. I mean, you might be saying things people will be laughing at while they should not be laughing at. I mean, they should be sad that they are laughing. And, people are like, they shouldn't be laughing. So, and this can be very like, wow, embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for
So,
me, I think I enjoy it when I'm interpreting and the speaker says something and the other people laugh. And when I say something, my audience also laughs. Like, I really like that. It means that I was able to relay whatever the
Yeah,
speaker said for
yeah.
them to also laugh.
Yeah, because they are supposed to be laughing. So when they got the
Yeah.
joke, you are like, "Wow, I did a great job,"
Yeah.
because I got
Yeah.
it. Because if I didn't get the joke, it means that you didn't get the joke, or maybe you got
Exactly.
it, but you didn't convey it right, and
Exactly. Exactly.
misunderstanding. Wow. So reason why interpretation is very, it's very challenging, very tricky compared to translation. You have time, you can double check, you have dictionaries, you can ask people around.
Mhm.
And but what can be the challenges in translations? Because you have all the time you need, and how can it be challenging again?
I think the challenge has to do with specialization because for some countries, for instance, or some settings, people specialize. So we have literary translators that do translation of books, right? They do poetry and all that. We have business, we have science, we have medicine, for instance. So these are things that people specialize in. But now in our side of the world, I think we do everything. In Africa, you would hardly come across someone who says, I only translate medical content, or I only translate scientific content. And so the capacity to just handle this, different content is a challenge. And so you always have to find resources, dictionaries, do research. But I also think it's good to be honest. Like, if you know you can't do a particular theme, maybe you can outsource, like give it to someone else. Recently, I think I was called upon to do something that was not part of the things I've been doing. Like, the theme was a bit different, and so I had to give it out. So I think just being able to know what you can do and what you can do and what you can outsource. But of course, if you're willing to learn, put in the time and make sure that the client has a very good output,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should hesitate, right? You should go for it. But the challenge will be, yes, just having to translate different content. Aside that, also maybe it's something that we'll talk about later. But now there are so many platforms, right? To handle. So maybe a client will give you a translation and say, use such and such translation platform,
Mm.
um, which perhaps you're not conversant with. So you also have that capacity. You need to have the capacity to learn how to use new platforms and to learn quickly. And so that's quite also interesting in the work that we do. Yeah.
Mm. And that's a good transition to go to the second part, assessing the evolution of the profession, because you're talking now about platform and stuff like that. So the question is, but before we go to that second part, I have one last question for this part one. Which do you prefer? Can you say that, or you cannot
You mean
say that?
interpretation or translation?
Yes. Which one do you prefer? Or you are not allowed to say that?
Oh, no, no, I can say it.
Hmm.
I would say, it's interesting, right? Which one do I like?
Yeah.
I think because I'm an interpreter by training, I prefer interpretation, because I was trained for 2 years for interpretation. For translation, I learned it on the job, right? So I would say I really like interpretation, especially because it helps me to meet new people. Like, I really love being in the conference and meeting new people during the tea break and during lunch and having conversations about so many things. I think it's nice.
Mm. So for those who are listening to us, students, aspiring interpreters or translators, so to become a translator or to become an interpreter, what's the general path to follow? You go to a school, you graduate, and can you do both at the same time, or you always need to be picking one of them?
Okay, so previously, I mean, a long, long time ago, there were really no programs for translation interpretation. So most of the older people in the profession just learned it on their own, right? They just started, and with practice, they got to learn it, and then that's it. But currently, there are interpretation schools where you can do a bachelor's degree, for instance, in translation. and then go on to do a master's in interpretation if you want, or you can do um, a master's in translation. So basically, after you've studied in a particular area, you can build the other area like on your own. You can always learn on the job. Maybe if you've studied for translation, you can always practice and study for interpretation because they are so linked. And the core aspect is being and is like really being good in two languages, right? So if you're really good in two languages, you have a good start. And some people don't even have to follow any formal training to become interpreters. So um, I think it's about personal aptitude, your capacity to learn quickly, your capacity to grasp information quickly, your capacity to use your knowledge of the languages that you know effectively, right? Um, is what is important. And of course, there are schools you can find out about programs for interpretation. Once you Google, you'll find many of them. The one I attended is called the Advanced School of Translators and Interpreters. Is in Boya in Cameroon in the southwest region. I think it's one of the best schools in Africa when it comes to
In
training for
Africa?
yes in Africa
Mm.
is one of the best. The training is really rigorous. It's rigorous, but it's amazing. You come out as a new person like with so much knowledge and so much expertise and also professional ethics. So I would recommend that school to anyone who wants
And you
to
went
go
to
through
that
the
school
master's program.
and you majored in interpretation.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I see. Good, good. So, as one alumni of that school, what's your best memory? One of your best memories from your learning experience in that school?
You know, the reason I'm laughing is because in that school, like one defining point that would really show that you went to that school is that most people cry. Like you would cry like during there'll be a period where you would cry. Like it's so intense, it's so challenging. So it wasn't. I wouldn't say I was so happy because I was really like
You feel you,
concerned
you feel
about.
you feel like quitting, you know.
Yes, I mean some people quit actually. I mean, to be
Hmm.
honest, some people quit because like they can't take it anymore. It's frustrating. So I think I would say that the best moment was graduation. Like really that time when I was like now reaping the fruit of my effort. I was taking pictures. I was like, wow, so this is really happening. I'm leaving here in 2 years. I'm not, because some people have to stay behind and do one more year. And so it was really interesting. Like I was really proud of myself for finishing because I was like, no, I can't stay here anymore. I have to just go. I have to go. Yeah. So it's a rigorous training. I mean, when you're there, you feel like, no, like it's so tedious, like because the standards are really high
Hmm.
and all that. But I think it's what we needed. It's what we need in the
So no regret
to
then.
become the best. Not at all. No, no, no.
Hmm.
If I'm supposed to do it, I think I'll do it all over again. There's no regret. It's just that it really took me much effort. Also because I had lived most of my time in an English speaking country, right? So I had to do more effort to improve my level in French. And so that was a key challenge for me. I was very good in English, but I had to improve my level in French. And it really took a rigorous process. Yes. So at least I made it finally. So I'm glad.
Yes, you did it. And
Thank
now you
you.
are here as the operations manager of Bolingo. Yes, and your school principal might be proud of you. Yeah, this is our girl.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
good, good job. So that's the transition to go to the part two, assessing the evolution of the profession. So earlier you mentioned about the upcoming of apps, platforms, stuff like that. And then you said in the beginning there were no formal training for interpreters and translators, and then schools, kind of came out. So tell us more. How has the translation profession evolved since you first started out?
Okay. So I think I have to go back in time because I didn't start a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I started a few years ago. So I mean, we know that in the beginning, like several years back, right? We're using purely we didn't have computers, we're using paper. So I think everything was handwritten. So I can't even begin to think about how they were translating books, for instance, like manually, like writing it down and all that. So it was very tedious, right? And then we had a computer, and then we had Microsoft Word, and then we have now various means of changing file format, right? And after that, now we have translation, or we call them CAT tools, computer assisted tools that help us to translate. Um, and so we are now able to put the work in the tool and translate it, and it gives us translation memory, which helps us to go faster. So with the memory, when you translate, the memory is kept, and next time when you have a similar translation, it just matches, right? So I think our work has been made so much easier with these new things that we have. And let me also talk about machine translation, right?
Mm.
So now we have machine translation, and a lot of language professionals are pushing back because there's something called post editing. So some companies or entities will take their content through the machine, and then when the machine translates, then they would give it to a translator and say edit. And I think that this is really like the frustration. It's really frustrating for a lot of linguists because they feel like they are losing out in terms of like what they should be getting. I think there's one thing that we need to realize. Actually, research has shown that the amount of content that is being produced is so much. The content is huge, and we don't have enough translators to translate all that content. That is a reality. So, and I don't know whether you've realized that increasingly clients are sending content that they want to translate very fast.
Yeah.
So, a client to send you, let's say, um, 8,000 words and say, I need it in 2 days, right? And so you realize that content, like the need for translation is going faster. And translators, I mean, we are limited, right? There's a number of translators in the world. We have a fixed number. So the reality is that we are not enough to do all the content. So we need to really widen our way of thinking. The content is huge. So machine translation is there to help us. And the fact is that machine translation in the hands of a professional translator is magic. Like just imagine what you can do with it. You can do so much. A client has given you a job of, let's say, um, 2,000 words. You can pass it through machine translation and then edit it. The fact is that we are using it. I mean, I don't think there's a translator who would say that when they get a translation, they just start straight manually translating. No, you start from somewhere. So the basic start is the machine translation, which is very helpful. So you start from there and then you edit. So it's really helped us. So we have to start thinking about how to accept and how to utilize it. So machine translation is our friend, it's not our enemy. So the idea of thinking, I mean, the thinking that is going to take over our job is really a limited thinking, because I don't think it will. We are still relevant because machine translation has not gotten to the extent where it's very contextual, right? Because everything is about context, right?
Mm.
If I don't know if I have an example. Um, there are many examples where you would find a text that is in the context that can have different meanings, and it's only human beings who can really say this is the context. And so we will be relevant for a long time. And even beyond that, machine translation itself is also producing jobs, because it's human beings that are used to make to input data for machine translation. So it's still producing jobs. And so there are so many opportunities that would come from machine translation and AI. And also, even when it comes to voiceover, you would find that there are now platforms that do automatic voiceover, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we can also feel threatened and say, oh, so even the voiceover industry is being taken over by platforms. But there will still be need for original voices. And let me give the example of African languages. No matter how no matter how fast AI is running, these African languages is still a bit of a gray area. They are trying. I mean, now Google has a lot of African languages and all of that. But you can imagine the work that it will take to make African languages contextual. It's interesting, right? Even to have automatic voiceover in an African language. Like it's something that will take us some time. And even it also means that we will also participate in that process. So there is a lot of things that we can get from being open to accepting AI and machine translation. And I think that we should open up to it. Let's not think about, oh, the money I get or my income is going to be reduced because a machine is competing with me. That's not the case. The content is huge and we need more effort. Like we need the support of machine translation to do work faster for our clients.
I get that. However, there is a real issue though. Let me tell you one story. A guy contacted me and he said, okay, you would like me to do some translations. I said, okay, send me the documents. And he said, how much do you charge? I told him how much I charge. He said, oh, that's too expensive per page. And because I can just, go in a machine, copy and paste, and it's okay because I don't have time, so I want you to do that, for me. So you won't have to think, because that's what he was saying to me, because the machine will be thinking for you, will be translating for you. So it's not a big deal. So why are you charging that much? Because now that a free machine, because most of those machines are free, why do you charge that much? And I told him, well, that's what I charge, because you say the machine will be translating for me then, but I will be double checking, I will be revising the content, and I will be taking my time to do so. But the guy did not understand that value, that added value that I will be providing for his work. For him, the most of the job will be done by the machine. So I'm a kind of useless person, and the only thing I can add as a value is to just make sure that the machine is doing the job and copy and paste and proofread it, and it's done. So, and many people are doing such things nowadays. Reason why I told you that it is an issue. So what do you think about that situation? And how will be your reaction?
Okay, so first of all, let's be honest about the fact that translation is expensive, right? So it's not for everyone. Some people want translation, they think it's cheap, and so some of them will have this reaction. It's expensive. So when you're reaching out to a translator, it's not about machine translate. You don't have to. I think it's also disrespectful to just say machine can do this. No, it's disrespectful. So if you're reaching out, if you want, you can use machine and then give it to me, and I'll give you a rate at which I'll charge you. And of course, sometimes it doesn't, based on, depending on the content. When you use machine translation, it doesn't make sense. It's like you have to start all over again. So
it
sometimes
becomes
you just have
double
to,
work.
exactly. So you just have to charge your same rate as if it were original content, right, untranslated. So of course it's a challenge, but it depends on how we take it. The fact is that there will always be people who would say translation is expensive, and we have experienced it in our company. And so sometimes we don't, because we're a company, we don't waste too much time with people who can't afford, because we have operations to run. And so we have a client persona, we have clients that we work with, um, and usually they are NGOs. Most of our clients are NGOs that understand why they need the content. It's important for them, and so they are willing to pay for it.
And they
Also,
have a budget.
there exactly, they have budget for it. Um, Also, we need to understand that it's only people with a certain budget capacity that can afford translation. But some people don't have that capacity, but they still want to. And so this is also leads to another conversation in the industry where people are saying, "Oh, the rates are low, and people are taking low rates." But there are also people who are positioning themselves, in order to be well paid, right? So we need to think about how we can add value. So machine is there, but how can I add value? For instance, if I get a translation, how can I advise the client on what are the specificities of this task? Just providing consultancy, like additional consultancy to say, this is what I think, this is how I see this text, this is what we should do, and all that. So it's more about we thinking about ways to add value to what we do. And as for people thinking that machine would do it for them, we can't avoid it. People would always think that you are equal to a machine. People would always think that, oh, if there's a machine, then why don't I use it? My point is that there will always be people who would think that machines can do better. And for those people, just tell them, to use a machine. Just say, okay, you can use a machine then and see what it gives you. And definitely, when they use a machine, it's going to cost them more. Like the impact of the machine will cost them more than using a human translator. And you would even see that on some companies' website, the content is all, it doesn't make sense. The content is all over the place. And so it doesn't even show that you respect your client. As a company, it shows that you don't even value your clients. And so I would say you shouldn't be too concerned about clients that want to compare you to a machine. There are clients that actually understand the value of translation, and they understand the value of our job, who would not compare us to machines. Yeah, and so I think these are just challenges that we have to think about and navigate, and then think about our role. Okay, now that there's machine translation, what is our role? How can we add value to the offerings that we have?
Hmm. Good, good. So anyway, we are already in part 3, talking about analyzing the challenges interpreters and translators have been going through. So my question is, AI has come because of the challenges translators have been going through to help them, to provide them with help, or AI is threatening, according to what you were talking about. AI should not be seen as a threat. However, as I told you that story, there are some people that are being threatened by AI. People disrespecting the value added by a human, a real human translator, and they kind of neglect people because many companies want to cut costs, want to reduce this, don't want to spend money on some stuff, and if it includes translation, and if like a machine can do that, let's go for it. But we know there are consequences, because you won't be getting what you are looking for in terms of quality. So we need to know where the problem lies for tackling it and providing solution. So my question is, where is the problem? If AI is not a threat, what's wrong? Or what don't we understand?
Okay, so increasingly the world is moving towards automation, and you realize that many jobs are becoming obsolete, right? And changing and being done in a faster way. So AI was developed to help us do our work better wherever in whatever field we find ourselves. Like, AI is really helpful, and for us it's machine translation that has come. So there are some people who are of the view that, oh, maybe in about 100 years or something, we won't need translators anymore. But what I think is that I think change is the only constant thing, as we know, right? And so as our work is changing and the working environment is changing, we also have to change. We also have to learn new skills, develop new competencies, and position ourselves. But what I can assure you is that, at least not even if um, translators will not be relevant, it's not in our age, it's not within the next 100 years, will still be relevant. But what we have to just do is not to be against machine translation completely, because whether you are for or against it, if you're against it, you fade away. That is the truth. You won't keep up, like, because you're not willing to learn the trends, so you won't keep up with it. You won't learn how you can use it to your advantage. Um, and so it's interesting, because even though we are saying that machine translation is bad, are we also saying that the CAT tools are bad? The computer assisted tools that we use, are we saying that they are bad? Because let's say, for instance, that you have a regular client, right? And you have a CAT tool that you're using to translate this client's job, and you have a translation memory. And so it means that when the client sends you work, if the client sends you, like, for instance, 1,000 words, um, because you have a translation memory, you might maybe translate 500 words because the other 500 words is already there. You've already translated it previously. So with that, we are not complaining, right? Because it's for advantage. So like we just need to see how can I harness technology? So how can I use technology to my advantage? And this is one of the advantages. Use translation memory because your clients might not necessarily know that you have a translation memory. Um it's your investment. Maybe you've paid to have that tool. So it's your investment. So just find ways and means to tap into the technology and to use it to advantage. I think that's what I can say. I don't know if it's useful.
Yes, it is. It is. And that reminds me a story, another story, my own experience. You know, I'm telling you the truth. I have to confess that I was against machine translation. Like really against. And this is like 5 years ago. Not that long. I have English in my head. I understand stuff, so I can use my own brain and do the job. Why would I be relying to a machine? So, I mean, this is, I would see it as competition of competence. I don't know if you get what I mean. Like
it's like the machine is competing with your capacity, right?
Exactly. And I would see a machine as a threat because what if I rely on that machine and I lose my superpower? And it decreases my value, my ability to keep up with the work. I didn't want that at all. So I was like scared, like, no, I don't want to use, and I would not use it. And I would even, I was laughing at people were using it. Oh, are you using that? So you can't translate it on your own? You have to rely on a machine? So you are a machine then. and you know what made me change? No, because I would have to do double work. You have to copy and paste. The machine will translate one time and you have to proofread it. So for me, this would take time. It's a long time. Let's do it straight. I see it, I translate. I see it, and that's it. Okay. So for me, it will maintain my brain, my capacity of translating things on my own, and it will level up my skills. However, it was time consuming because other people would not work like that anymore. They will use the machines. Time will be an advantage for them because they will use speed, and I will rely on efficiency, quality, but I will be slow. And then I said, okay, what should I do then? And I said, okay, let's try it out and see how it goes. And then I started using it because I was like, okay, if I need to be playing the game for a long period of time, and I need to catch up because that's what is being done. But how to use it and not lose what I thought I would be losing. But at the end of the day, I didn't lose anything. And I was like, wow, this was just fear of nothing? What was I being afraid of? And it was what we say in French, préjugé. I was like holding myself back for things that were not true. And then I realized that, fortunately, I caught up, and then I was able to use the machine and do the NB, go faster. But we have to know the place and the role of the machine. What I've noticed that the machine is providing me with speed typing. And this is a big game changer because you need to type if you translate. But with the copy and paste, just copying and pasting, it saves time for your typing. And this is mind-blowing. And I was like, wow. So the machine is helping me save time for the typing. And it also adds some words, and all I have to do is to transition into a proofreader. And because I am a human, and as you said, I have the context, I have the human feeling, the human touch, then I can provide the value that the machine cannot provide. And we have to be more accurate on that. What humans can do compared to what machines can do. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yes, I think you've summarized it, right? It's providing the context. So the machine has translated, and yours is to edit. So you're not a proofreader to just go through and provide context. Sometimes when I use machine translation, I even laugh. I'm like, okay, so I mean, I laugh because the machine wasn't able to understand a particular thing. So it's just interesting seeing how it translates. And sometimes I also get amazed. Honestly, I'm like, wow. So the machine was able to translate this thing like this. I don't know whether you've had this aha moment with machine translation. Sometimes it can really amaze you, like, wow, this translation sounds so natural, and I don't think I would find a better translation, so I leave it like that. So it's just that, like, that capacity to be flexible and to interact with the tools and to use them, and the speed that it provides us, honestly, like, we have the capacity to double our income. Honestly, it's not about your income cannot reduce with this kind of opportunity, because now, if before you could do 1,000 words a day, now maybe you can do 5,000 words a day. And so your income is not reducing. So you should see it from, as we usually say, why the glass being half full and not half empty.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say machine translation is very helpful. So we just have to utilize it very well as translators, because we are the humans to manage it and to give it context as well.
Yeah, yeah. And then finally, let's talk about interpretation, because so far we've been talking about translation, machine translation. What about interpretation and AI, those new technology stuff? I've never experienced AI interpretation, so I don't know if you had. Can you tell us more about it compared to machine translation?
Yeah, so I hear a lot about automatic interpretation, but I've not used any yet, but it's something that people are working on. I mean, and you can see these efforts already in this gadget. Sometimes that can speak to people, right, in different languages. I think there are platforms or apps like that that can speak to people in have conversations in different languages. So it's a starting point. For me, I would say that if machine is able to interpret, we wouldn't still be irrelevant. It will still be about context, regardless. And perhaps we might find other roles. I haven't really thought about this particular part of it before. I don't know how we will handle it, but I'm sure that when it comes, we will find a solution. Would know how to also navigate that space. Yeah.
Anyway, at the end of the day, no machine can replace a human. That's a fact.
They can. They can. They can replace us. It's just about how.
I mean, replace where we shouldn't be replaced. I mean, they are like
Okay.
we talk about context, feeling, emotion, stuff like that. At the end
Yeah,
of the
so
day,
maybe you can say completely. So you can add completely. They can replace us, but not maybe not completely or not fully.
yeah, because
I think
machine have been replacing, like we are using a
exactly.
computer, but
Yes.
we always come to that threat thing where what if the machine will steal our jobs? Because it's been happening in other professions.
Yes. Yes.
So
So I mean, we all have to evolve. Like, we always have to also think about how we can be more useful in the space that we find ourselves, so that we're not irrelevant.
to end this very interesting conversation, do you feel threatened?
Mm. Yes, I think that my point came out clearly during the conversations. I don't feel threatened at all, and more so because I am working with African languages. I think that those of us in Africa have an advantage, so we have the upper hand, because currently there's not so much information on our languages. Like, it's still like a gray area. It's still clouded, right? So there's an opportunity for us to also focus on our languages, because the whole process of developing them is in itself a way
It will take a
to
century, maybe 2 centuries.
yeah, so it's a whole thing on its own, right? So I think that we have a lot to offer in Africa for African languages. And so we shouldn't always think about the colonial languages. Because for if you compare an African language rather and a colonial language, you would see that there's a huge gap. If you take French and Baoulé, for instance, imagine the level that French has gone. Imagine the number of linguists we have for French. How many linguists do we have for Baoulé? You can count them. Even finding them will be difficult. And so there's all those opportunities. So we need to start thinking about, okay, so we are always struggling to learn these colonial languages. Maybe we can add one African language to it, even our own African languages. So you're learning English, but you add your own native language from your hometown to it. It's fantastic. And the interesting thing is that people from the US, for instance, and other people are really fascinated when they come to Africa because they wonder how we are so multilingual. Like we have the capacity to learn, and that's why we also learn even other languages faster. We can learn English faster, we can learn Spanish faster because we grew up in that multilingual environment. So we really have an advantage because our brains are really already ready. From a young age, you hear various languages, you hear various accents. So even for those who are learning English, I think they can easily learn it because of that, because already they are Africans and it's easy for them to grasp other languages. So yeah, we shouldn't feel threatened. And I believe that we have much more to offer. We have value to offer. And so we should think about that instead of like feeling, um, I think, resentful, feeling resentful and seeing the machine translation as a competitor. Rather, we should think about, okay, so this thing is there. How can I use it to double my income? How can I use it to provide faster service to my clients?
Yeah, definitely. So my final takeaway would be like, according to what you said, as long as we value our African languages, we will be well. I mean, we won't be worrying in the future. So thank you so much, Ady. It's been a great pleasure talking to you about this very, sensitive topic, but very relevant nowadays. And thank you. So what would be your last words?
My last words, I think we've spoken about the importance of translators and interpreters. We've spoken about the role of AI, machine translation, and all the developments. I think my last word will be to encourage anyone who is learning English, because I know you focus on English a lot, to encourage people to find spaces where they can listen to English, like because now with COVID-19, we've seen how there are more virtual spaces, like everywhere you go, there are webinars and all that. And those webinars have opened up spaces where previously it's only a few people who could go. Now, anyone at all can take part in those spaces. So just have the habit of like finding events. And also, because you're learning a language, you have to learn it in different areas, fields. So, for instance, you can find events on the environment, events on world peace, events on agriculture, so that you're grasping terminology from all these events. So, just joining webinars and just listening to people talk and interacting and engaging will really help you to learn a language. And also to encourage anyone who also wants to join the language industry. It's a fascinating industry, and so just do some research, and then you can have an entry point. Maybe you can take a course or something and start from somewhere. So these are my last words. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for inviting me for the second time on this program. I appreciate it.
And don't worry, that won't be the last. There will be more talks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish you same.